live, but I had all these guys in this other chat. You there, man? Strikes. Had me cracking up. That is one lively chat you got going there, man. I think I cleared it out, and this morning I went back and there's like over almost 600 posts in there. Wow, it's wonderful. Actually, that's a good thing. Good evening.
What's up, Banana? How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Good. Another day.
Yeah. Yeah, it sure was. It was a good day. Kind of ended on a good note. I got, you know how I like to prep tweets for the morning time when people are active on Twitter. I've got one staged for tomorrow morning. I think it'll be a goodie. I sent you a copy of the text, the post.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a good one. I liked it.
We're personifying the grays over here, Zen.
Did you write that, or did AI write that for you?
Well, AI usually gets them started for me, and then I take it from there. Sometimes I'll edit a lot, sometimes just a little bit. They always need at least something, some kind of edit. But yeah, I would say that one was a good 40% me. Just got the idea from ChatGPT. Dude, AI is the ticket. I've been saying it for about 10 days now. Communities that aren't leveraging AI this cycle stand to be left behind. I just don't know how they're going to compete when you got, you can literally make images with AI, and then you can make a post based on the image with AI. And all it has to, you don't even have to get an idea, have an original idea yourself. You can ask ChatGPT, hey, give me some ideas for this token I'm promoting. And it'll give you a list of 10. You pick one and you paste it in there. You say, hey, give me a picture. It'll give you a picture, and then you say, all right, write me a post. It writes you a post. It's that simple. It's like, what?
Yeah, it's crazy how fast it's evolving, right? Like, I remember probably 2 years ago when my wife's brother, he's in the tech industry, and we were eating lunch, and he showed me like ChatGPT's version of image, picture AI picture creator. And at that time, it was horrible compared to now, right? But he typed in what he wanted in the image, and then it put it together. And at that time, I was like, damn, that's pretty cool. And you think back to the image it created for me that time, it was a horrible image in general. But just in the last 2 years, it's evolved so far to where we're able to use it as pretty decent pictures on our posts and even videos.
Yes.
So you kind of just zoom out and you're like, gosh, where is crypto going to be next cycle?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it really has a long way to go. I mean, you get a decent image, you get a decent one. You just need to make one tweak, and it goes back a couple steps. You're like, oh no, but and the videos have a long way to go. But I have a hunch that the market is going to demand, that the technology is going to respond to the market demands, because I'm sure the demand for this technology is through the roof. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So
mechanical things and automated features, that's one of the things that I think is super nice about pTGC is it's tapping into the mechanical driven demand. And in every industry, you see them constantly evolving with the use of robots, machinery, AI. And it just makes sense that all of that would come also to crypto, right? We're using AI to create our advertisement, our onboarding tools, and then we're also using mechanically driven functions with these liquidity webs to also bring demand to the protocol as well. So we're leveraging pretty much how the world is evolving around us in so many different ways, just with, imaginary internet money.
Yeah. Yep. And like in 5 years, we're all going to be sitting on our own beach. In the morning, we'll wake up and click our computer like 5 different times, and then we'll just all go to the beach and chill for the rest of the day. And we'll come back in the evening and see what kind of work our computers did for us. You know?
Yeah, it's definitely important to be ahead of it, because it's definitely taken over.
You got it. Yep. Those that resisted books, wrecked. Those that resisted the internet, wrecked. Those that resisted cell phones, left behind. Eventually got one. Resist AI. Yeah.
Even on Pulse Chain, like once, I feel like it hasn't spread to other chains yet because there hasn't been a lot of success on Pulse Chain yet, like as far as like the blockchain moving up, which then moves up all the alt tokens. But I do have a feeling that after this cycle, which I believe will be a good cycle for Pulse Chain, other blockchains will start to create these liquidity webs with fees in between the transactions, or even not even the fees, just to use them as an index of assets they like on the chain. And ever since, we've kind of mimicked this idea about what we saw with PDI, and then we put our own flair to it and our, the utility of the fee in between these transactions, going to buy and burn LP ads. But like, even since that day, this is a year and a half ago, you've seen it probably mimic thousands of times if you totaled it up to date. People doing it with non-fee tokens, people doing it with fee tokens, because you can't deny that the mechanical driven demand, the ability to create indexes via liquidity, it's all really standout functions, right? And the reason you see so many assets doing it here on Pulse Chain is because it's proven to work. But then the funny part is no one in crypto even knows we're doing this stuff yet. But I do believe when Pulse Chain starts having its time, and then bigger players start coming over here and seeing what we've done, it'll probably catch on very, very quick, right?
Yep.
Pretty much every asset would probably be created with a liquidity web.
I don't know. I mean, if you got the liquidity to add to make the web, I don't know why anybody would not make a liquidity web. Yeah,
they would just make it smaller, right? This is what you see with the thousands of tokens that have launched on Pulse Chain. They mimic it. It's just very small.
Yeah. So when do you think are we in the bull run? Is this really a bull run, or is it just the beginning stages, or where are we in this cycle? Do you have any idea?
I believe that we're going to have a nice move here soon. I don't really know. To me, it seems like we should have a nice move here soon, right? I think everything's lining up. We'll see if Trump stops cracking a few eggs and lets this omelet form. But I do think what he's been doing is priming us for a good move up. And how I look at it is, worst case scenario, if for some reason that was the bull market and we're now in a downtrend, well, we're halfway through the bear market now. And we're holding up just fine, which the good news about that is, okay, another half year, boom, we're back into bull market mode. But I don't believe that's the case. I believe we have a good amount of time, or I think we have a good amount of upwards momentum to go.
I do too.
Ethereum is the biggest tell to me. The fact that Ethereum is still kind of just lingering in this area and has yet to break an all-time high. Of course, there's a chance that it doesn't, right? But I do believe it will break its all-time high. I believe Bitcoin has a chance to go higher. And I believe when that alt season does take place, that's our time to shine. Previous cycle, that was Hex's time to shine, right? So I think we're kind of waiting on all that stuff in general.
I caught that, Zen. I caught that.
What?
Should I repeat it? I will. I will.
Yeah.
Last cycle, Hex shined. This cycle, The grays are going to shine. Yeah, I'm with you, man. It seems like I am becoming more bullish about this ecosystem with every passing week. I become more firm in my belief that this Gray's eco is going to impress everyone, including the holders.
It's just, I would say that's just naturally because it's becoming stronger. Every single week we move forward. Every single week we continue to move on without like something horrible happening, right? Is the momentum of the snowball getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I literally just wrote a post about that kind of idea. It's like every single day we're adding more liquidity and we're removing supply every single day.
Yeah.
So there's more value going into our ecosystem. And yeah, it might not like immediately show, because if prices of our asset goes down or prices of assets we're connected to go down or the general market goes down, it's not showing. But the truth is of what's happening like under the scenes is every time we're doing a buy and burn, that is literally PLS tokens being injected into our liquidity pools and pTGC removed and sent to the debt adrift. Like that's literally value backing the asset and then scarcity being put in place. Yeah. But that doesn't even include, like, we're also doing LP ads. So constantly with every single transaction, technically there's more PLP tokens in the liquidity web too. Do you see them when the market's moving down? Not really. But when the market starts to move up, you start to realize, oh, dang, like for the last 4 months, there's a lot more PLP tokens in there, right? There's more value. Mm-hmm. So the momentum of this machine is becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, which makes people believe more, right? This is the same idea that's happening with Bitcoin. Bitcoin 10 years ago had a lot less people believing in it. Obviously, less people knew about it, but the momentum wasn't there. Now there's so much momentum built behind Bitcoin that even, probably a 50% dip, states are looking at buying it. Nations are looking at buying it. The biggest companies in the world are looking at buying it. Why? Because the momentum is there. The trust is there. The time is there to prove what it's going to do over time as far as an asset goes.
Yeah. And you talked about what happens in the Gray's ecosystem with that 5% fee going back into the system, 3% of that 5% going back into the system day after day after day. I mean, you can go away for a month and come back, and the ecosystem has become 30 days stronger. And like when I first came into this ecosystem at the end of January 2024, I thought I was late. Do you know that it's dawning on me that with every passing month I become more early in this system? Yet when I first showed up, I was late. I'd missed it. But I acted. I took action, got in, and now I feel like I've been in here a long time.
Definitely have been here a long time. What's interesting too is just as it grows, like you never know when like new very strong community members are going to pop up, right? Mm-hmm. Like is that today? Is that tomorrow? Is that a week from now? Like when another prairie banana will come onto the scene. And that's just naturally what's going to happen as it grows. Not that anyone could take your place, banana, but as our community grows, there is people that will stumble across this ecosystem and want to participate in working for their bags and educating on people on something that they believe in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I welcome them and encourage people to start a channel, start your Twitter, start actually, pursuing followers on Twitter and influencing all of crypto on Twitter by building your Twitter follower and, start a YouTube channel. And, let me know if you start a YouTube channel. I will subscribe and support you. All of us will. Really. We could use more good streamers. And here,
I definitely think having a bigger YouTube presence would be good for our ecosystem, right?
Listen, Izzy Money on YouTube right now says, I want to start streaming on pTGC, UFO, and the ecosystem. Go for it, Izzy. Reach out if you need some help. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, that was an important message. Yeah, if anyone wants to step up and educate on pTGC and UFO, and it's also, you know, in general for Pulse Chain too. Like when you're talking about pTGC and UFO, you're kind of talking about Pulse Chain. I think it's like a lot of people think of it about being an influencer as like getting the followers and stuff like that. Where I get enjoyment out of like doing these spaces and stuff like that is the fact that on one of these spaces, I might be able to educate someone on financial freedom and what we are actually doing here within pTGC. And if I can help possibly change someone's life, even if that's just one, if that's 10, if that's 100, if it's 1,000, if it's 10,000, right? Obviously the goal of 10,000, 100,000, the more people that we can touch with pTGC, the better, because I believe in the system that much. But it kind of just starts with one, right?
Yes. Yep. Like one subscriber to your channel. or one follower on Twitter. It starts with one. Like at this time last year, I think I had 500 or 600 followers on Twitter, but I got real deliberate about it. Not like super deliberate, but I was like, I'm going to start building my following, because at some point I might want people to follow me. And now I'm up to like 2,200. But it took a year. And on YouTube, I think at this time last year I had 600, 700 maybe. And I have not really put much effort into it. And I'm not a great streamer, but I've got 1,400. Everybody that follows me on YouTube is in this ecosystem, practically. But, you know, if a guy really put in effort on Twitter and YouTube, you can gather a following like real quick. If you keep the quality up, you know, and you're persistent and consistent.
I think the time where YouTube shines is when the markets start moving up and when crypto starts moving up in general, because most people, when they want to educate themselves, I personally believe they're not landing in Twitter. I think they're landing on YouTube.
You got it. Yep.
When I was told to look into Hex, however many years ago, where I started was on YouTube. And I didn't even go on to X for a very, very, very long time. Pretty much after I even started to work on my own protocol was when I even landed on Twitter.
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
You're exactly right.
I spent a good year only on YouTube.
Me too.
Yeah. So I think it's not here right now, but I do believe when the markets start pushing up, that is where the onboards are going to be. And now that I'm like saying it out loud, maybe I need to kind of work on tapping that a little bit. Maybe I'll move one of my weekly VCs to YouTube or something like that. Now I'm just saying it out loud. I'm like, wow, I should really listen to myself sometimes. That might be a good idea.
Sounds like a good idea, Zen. Just saying.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah. Reach out if you need some help, man.
Probably will.
Hey, I think this is where I think let me back up. I read a little something from Cryptographics, and it was some kind of chart, and it was explaining how like the bull run is here, but it hasn't really started yet. And so it has me thinking that, okay, we can relax. Not that we can slow down our efforts, but because I start feeling like it's too late to stream about, you know, the greatest currencies, or too late to do this or that to try to bring people in because the bull run's already here. Well, I don't think that's necessarily the case. I don't think it's time to let off the gas. And I think we have time to step on the gas, because I don't believe retail's here yet. They're coming, but I don't believe they're here yet. And I think we're going to be ready by the time they come, I hope.
Well, yeah, pulse chain's been literally going down for the last 2 years. So I definitely believe we have some bull market left.
Yeah.
For onboarding, the problem is no one's really looking at crypto right now, like in the outside. So it's a lot of people that have been here for the last 4 years, 8 years, 10 years. But it's a great opportunity to get into pulse chain, right? The fact that you can get into pulse chain for pretty much half of the price you could have gotten into it 4 years ago, is just mind blowing.
Yeah, I mean, you know that pulse chain has a long way to go when it's at a negative 3x. You think Richard's going to accept a negative 3x? Not on your life, man. Oh.
Yeah, Richard, I personally believe that he's someone who just waits for the right time. He's someone who waits for the current to stop working against him and waits for it to shift in his favor. And when it shifts in his favor, he knows it's go time. That's personally what I believe what's going on here is he could have obviously fought the current and injected those funds for the last year and a half. But how I think he looks at it is, you know what? There's going to be an awesome opportunity to get into an unbelievable blockchain for the next 2 years. Or, I don't even think he knows a timeline. He's just like, hey, until the market does what the market does, some people will come, some people will leave, right? But the market will kind of decide the believers from the non-believers. And when it's go time, it's go time.
Yeah.
And then for us, we're like, okay, yeah, we're along for that ride. We're also just in. But the nice thing about our sub ecosystem, it's like, okay, well, how many people can we educate? How many people can we onboard? How many people can we have join our community, educate on this protocol, educate on financial freedom, passive income, situations where you don't have to touch your principal if you can get that principal to actually become a decent amount of money. Like you can't really do that in the real world, like without working for 40 years, right? But crypto gives you this super unique ability to possibly turn 10K into $1 million very, very easily, right? Mm-hmm. We've talked about how easy it is to do 100x, even from these points here, for a year and 8 months. And very easily, it can still do another 100x, 10x against Pulse Chain, 10x on Pulse Chain. You're up 100x. That's someone that maybe only has $10,000 to their name to somewhat play a risky game with crypto, but let's say $10,000 and they turn that to $1 million. Well, the crazy thing about that $1 million is that asset is actually paying them divs every single day. They're earning more pTGC off of that asset. They can actually take profits on a monthly basis and never touch their initial investment. They can still hold all those tokens and constantly earn more. And then if another move happens, let's say it goes from 100x to a 200x, well, that 1 million just turned to 2 million, right? Mm-hmm, and one thing that I think is super special about Hex and pTGC, because the reason this is implemented into pTGC is because of Hex and due to Richard's education, is the locking side of pTGC. The sad truth is in this industry, even if you're in the right product, you usually exit the majority of your bag too early. This is what happened to Bitcoin people. This is what happened to ETH people. I just saw someone posting the other day. They're showing the coin market cap for like years, and they're showing how all these different projects flowed between the top like 50. It's like every few years it's different projects, but it had like Bitcoin and Ethereum just constantly at the top. And they were kind of saying like, people always say like, you're so lucky that you've been in Bitcoin and Ethereum for this long. Look at how much you're up. But the sad truth is a lot of the profits that they've made in ETH and Bitcoin, they've moved to other assets, and 99% of protocols go down or never recover back to all-time highs the next cycle.
Yeah.
They constantly will sell the golden goose instead of just letting it print eggs, right? And that's what I think is super, super unique about pTGC and Hex. And you don't gotta lock up your whole bag for 10 years. You know, you can lock a portion of your bag, right? Like your entire bag doesn't have to be this massive far out stake or lock. And this goes for Hex too, right? Like you don't have to go all out with your whole bag, but think about the long-term vision of why you're in pTGC. Do you think it has the potential to be a multi-cycle protocol? And do you think Pulse Chain is going to be successful? Locking a bag out might actually save yourself from the thing that's actually attacking you the most, and that's yourself.
Yeah. Well, you know, some of that, it's like I mentioned on my stream yesterday about holding Bitcoin, because I was talking about I think I was talking about locking or staking. And I was like, for me, holding Bitcoin for a 4X and not being able to do anything with it in the, you know, while I'm holding it, it's like, would be torture. So even outside of locking pTGC and UFO, if you, well, take pTGC, for example, even if you don't lock it, you can stake it. And then when you claim it, it's almost like sometimes we have a little itch where we want to interact with a contract. We want to interact with our tokens, do something with them. Well, pTGC
you know what that is it's really humans are programmed that they need to be working to gain income.
That's it.
So you feel like when you get into crypto, when your money's actually working for you, you start to squirm a little bit. You know, I need to work for my money. What can I do? What can I move around to make more gains? But the truth is, majority of the time when you're moving stuff around, you're actually hurting yourself. And it's all about really just finding the right asset and staying in that asset long term. But you're 100% right. Like you almost feel like even with some more stagnant assets, like, oh, this isn't earning me anything, which really that doesn't matter too much if it's doing tons and tons of X's. But what's cool about the locking idea with the pTGC system is even if you're locked out 10 years, all you're holding APY lands right in your wallet liquid. All your staking APY you can claim at any point right into your wallet, and all your locking APY you can claim right into your wallet. So as the protocol becomes successful, you're actually giving yourself little bonuses, like, oh, here, go treat your family to this, or go treat, but you're never actually having to touch your initial lockup. Or maybe you left some funds liquid anyways, and you kind of did your own staking system or ladder of some sort, or maybe half and half liquid. Or everyone has their own goal and their own idea. But I just kind of wanted to bring up that there is so many shiny objects in this industry, and a lot of the time, even some of the players that were in Hex, it's tough in crypto. Like we can sit down at these levels for a very long time, and stuff can start to move very, very quick. And sometimes you might see, let's say if there was no locking in the pTGC and it wasn't paying you APY, maybe you're someone that's like, oh, okay, I got that 5X. You know what? I'm just going to take the money. But think about if you did that with Bitcoin 10 years ago, right? Like you literally missed out on an opportunity of a lifetime. So I don't know. I just kind of wanted to bring that up because I do think the fact that you are able to lock your pTGC is a very, very, I wouldn't say unique utility, but I do think it is unique to our system that the rewards are claimable at any time.
Yes.
So you can constantly take care of yourself while the protocol becomes more successful, but you also are protecting yourself from your own worst enemy, which is your emotions, your greed. And I don't want to say greed because it's your money anyways, but when you start to see the value in your crypto wallet change very, very rapidly, it can become very, very enticing to just and go splurge a little bit. But the thing is you don't know if you're going to find another bank, right? Like that might be the last golden goose you ever find, especially with where crypto's going, to where I do think it's going to be harder and harder to find those winners because there's just more trash. But you're also in a situation, right, to where if you come across life-changing money, let's say pTGC turns into that for you, if you can find a way for that life-changing money to actually become a constant revenue stream for you, which obviously is built into the code of pTGC on purpose because we want the value to remain in pTGC, you aren't just changing your life for a year, right? You could be possibly changing your life for the rest of your life. For an example, let's say pTGC, you got $20,000 in pTGC, it does 100x, and it's $2 million. Well, you could obviously go and splurge and have an amazing couple years on $2 million, and live it up. But a few years later, you're back at work, right? You no longer have any value to work for you, and you're back working for value.
Mm-hmm.
But if you actually kind of hold yourself to a little bit of, discipline, and even though you're sitting up, but you actually look at your life as, hey, I'm going to actually use this life-changing money to not just change my life for the short term, but for the long term.
Yeah.
And actually going to more live off of the eggs of this golden goose instead of slaughtering and eating like a couple delicious, amazing meals. Don't get me wrong, enjoy it a little bit, get yourself some things you're looking for. But having that financial discipline built into pTGC, I think is a very, very underrated utility built into the code.
Yeah, like with that goose, go take some feathers and make you a nice fluffy goose down pillow, but just don't kill the goose.
But it's sad in this industry how quick people are to kill the goose, right?
Yeah, I know.
Especially if you've had a couple losers lately, or the market's been down for, I'm going to use Pulse Chain as an example. On Pulse Chain, the market has been down for, 2 years. So if, let's say you didn't even play a bunch of plays and you just randomly went into pTGC and you're like, okay, I thought I was going to be exiting Pulse Chain by this point. The only win I have so far is pTGC. It almost feels like the best decision to just start pulling those profits and start exiting. But the honest truth, pTGC hasn't even gone anywhere yet. When you understand the system, you would be technically exiting way too early.
Yeah.
Because we're connected to the whole market, right? So you feel like it's a good decision, but it might be one of the worst decisions you've ever made.
Yeah. So let me throw this in real quick. As an educational, and I got this from, let's see, who did I get this from? I don't think I got it from B Roots, but I believe this principle can be traced back to B Roots, who made a mistake and didn't leave himself a moon bag years ago when he exited a position. And I've learned that, and it came from him somehow, that if you exit a position, guys, if you in the future decide you're going to sell your pTGC position, leave a moon bag, 10% or something like that, because you just never know.
Yeah, that was, I guess, kind of where I was getting into, even a little bit more than a moon bag, and just when we're educating people on the protocol, that moon bag, sometimes I've seen people even say, you know what, I'm taking profits, but I'm going to half, right? Or
you're going to what?
Keep half.
Okay.
Oh, I'm going to take profits of half and I'll keep half. If they've had a few bad plays, or that asset keeps going up, but then they want to move some money again, next thing they know, they start diluting it more and more and more. So I think something that could be actually very educational for people with pTGC system is the locking feature, right? Right when you feel properly educated on the system, I don't think it's good, the first second you get in and find out about it, just lock up. But spend a week really trying to educate yourself on the system and ask yourself, how much of this portfolio do I want for the rest of my life? And how much of it am I trying to use, if it becomes successful, right? If it does what we believe it does, do I need to pay off some of that debt that I have, like short term, get my house paid for, get these cars paid for, maybe go on a nice vacation. Okay, I'd say half and half. But then the nice thing is you can actually create that moon bag from the beginning. And even if, you want to close that moon bag down, there is a penalty to it. But the cool thing about it is the APY is accessible at any time. So even if you tap into that other half too quick, it kind of creates like a nice DCA out strategy for you with the other portion of your bag, especially if the asset keeps moving without you or with you because you locked yourself in.
Right. And I am thinking about UFO also has a function to help prevent us from exiting positions, and that's the LP and those share rates, those early share rates that all of us are enjoying. And I'm talking enjoying like presently, like people coming into UFO right now, the share rates are precious. They're going to be precious in a year from now. We think so. The point is that like those share rates that I have in my UFO paired with an RH ticker, I'm not undoing those. There's no way I'm undoing those. And so what does that do? It keeps my dirty little hands off of them. So UFO has its own little, lockup function also, and it's the shares, which is really cool. So both of these assets, pTGC and UFO, have their own, what do you call it? What does Jimmy Rins call it? The secret sauce. Their own little alien tech. With pTGC, it's locking the tokens, and the rewards from. It's the superpower. The rewards from locking up those tokens, which is pTGC's superpower. UFO's superpower is LPing, is the share rate, and LPing your UFO with an RH ticker, which also prevents you from, unpairing and perhaps selling your precious UFO.
Yeah, I 100% agree. It always reminds me, a couple of the designs was due to the pTGC was based on the person who onboarded me into Hex, like many years ago now. And one thing he told me was he was so thankful for the ability to lock up his Hex.
Yeah.
Because he believes that, because he had other crypto projects, right? He believes if all of his Hex was completely liquid, when it ran up 30x, he thinks he would have just took that 30x or a majority of it, right? But the fact that the majority of his bag was locked, it made him, for one, think about his liquid bag a little bit more, because there wasn't like, let's say he had $1,000 in and he locked up 80% of his bag. So he only had $200 liquid and, the $800 locked. Well, if that $200 did a, 10x, well, that's only $2,000 to where if he had his whole bag liquid, well, that's $10,000, right? That's a little bit of a different number. So the fact that he only had a portion of it and the rest was locked, he was a little bit more patient with that bag because it was smaller, and it actually made him understand the protocol better. And he held on for obviously a very, very long time, and his stakes still haven't come. But it really opened up his mind to that idea. He said he was very, very thankful for that locking mechanism. But then the other side of it is when his liquid bag started to thin out, and I was thinking about, the fact that he had so much value in stakes, but it was unaccessible, I did want to implement the side where with pTGC, your APY is actually claimable at any time.
Yes.
So you can actually enjoy your life off of the divs that your asset is paying you. And we haven't seen long term how amazing that could be for the adopters of pTGC now. But I personally believe it's going to be a system that really makes sense.
Yeah. I see on Twitter, thank you, Backwards Hat Dad, brought to our attention that the Senate is moving the Genius Act forward. they had a limited debate. They passed it there, and they're moving it on to, the next step, closer to approval.
Did we talk about that the last Spaces?
Yes, we did. At the very beginning of the Spaces. And that's where the government wants to get its hands on the yield from stablecoins, right? Isn't that how it works?
That's what I believe is going on, right? Like when you put your money in the bank right now, they give you a very, very small percentage of the value that they earn of your money.
Yeah.
And what crypto is actually offering users is the ability to earn like 100% of their yield off of their money. For an example, pTGC, 100% of the value that's generated off of your money being in the liquidity web. Obviously, you're holding the pTGC asset in exchange, but when the value is being generated within our system, 100% of that value is actually going back to the price of the asset and in APY to the holders of the asset. It's very, very powerful, right? And you have to realize, like, it's working very, very well in a small scale. You have to ask yourself, well, what happens if pTGC starts to become a massive scale? Like literally large amounts of money start coming into pTGC to store value in it because they believe in the idea of their value being put to work with 100% self-custody and the ability to see on-chain what that value is actually being used for and what it's generating and what that's paying them out via very, very little middlemen.
Right. Okay.
It's technically it's threatening to the biggest businesses in the world, in my opinion.
Oh, sure. Well, thanks to the Grays.
Yeah, the Grays aren't the only one doing this, right? A lot of large crypto projects, I think, are doing this. For an example, the stablecoin industry. When you get a stablecoin, right, you usually are taking crypto assets that you have, like let's say Ethereum, and then you're putting them into a liquidity pool, and then you're getting Tether in exchange. Or if you want to mint these assets, you have to put, this is more PDAI, right? Or not PDAI, normal DAI. You put collateral up into a vault, and then they give you DAI, and then you go and you can spend that DAI, and then you can pay back that DAI later on, and then they'll give you back your assets, right? Well, when those assets are out of your hands, there are ways to have those assets actually generate revenue. And the fact of the matter is the company that you put, or the code that you put that value in, can use that value to generate more value. And they can give you portions of that value. They can keep 100% of that value. And I think that's why they want to regulate this, because there is obviously going to be systems made that you store crypto assets in vaults and stuff like that, and they give you stable coins in exchange. Well, they want to use your assets to generate themselves more assets, right? This is what they've been doing for hundreds of years. So they're just trying to knuckle down and put the ball back in their court, because with crypto, the individual is actually given the ability to win very, very easily. And that's why I do think this is probably going to be the last mega cycle for crypto. Again, I think the window of changing your life via this industry is getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
Every single day. One thing that's super unique about pTGC is, like, literally it's stuck here on this chain. There's so much burnt liquidity. It's literally just decentralized code of the blockchain. Even the DAO funds, technically, the group of people that are managing it now, those don't have to be the people that manage it for the rest of the existence of the protocol. For an example, there's a decent chunk of people who kind of manage it at the moment. Let's say they're all in a bus together and they just died, right? Well, in another protocol where, let's say, those funds were just landing at a wallet, Well, now all those funds would be inaccessible. And on top of that, you would ultimately probably just give up on that protocol because you couldn't access the funds, and the funds would just keep piling into an empty wallet that no one has the keys to. It would pretty much make the protocol obsolete. But since our wallet is technically a smart contract, anyone who's a top 100 staker of the protocol can actually interact with that smart contract and carry out proposals for the growth of the ecosystem, which is very, very unique to our protocol.
Yes. You want to know something interesting about how pTGC and UFO are burning?
Yeah.
Okay, so UFO had a starting supply of 1 trillion, roughly. pTGC, 333 billion. So let's call that a third. pTGC has a third less tokens. And I'm referencing to the starting supply, not their existing circulating supply right now. But since January 1st, UFO has burned 7.7 billion. pTGC has burned 2.5 billion. So it's actually, the ratios are just about identical to the supply. Does that make sense? Are you muted? Did we lose you?
No, I'm here.
Okay.
Could you repeat it again?
Sure, no problem. So UFO had a starting supply of 1 trillion, and since January has burned 7.7 billion. pTGC, its starting supply, but it has burned 2.5 billion, about a third of what UFO has burned.
Yeah, and it's a third of the size. So they've pretty much burnt the exact same percentage since January.
Yes.
What you're saying?
Yes. But the reason I did that experiment is because after Spaces on Saturday, I think it was Polygon was asking me this question. Somebody was in the chat, and we answered it after we closed the space down. But in the last 30 days, they've burned about the same amount. And I know this is all numbers, kind of geeky stuff, but it's kind of interesting. So in the last 30 days, pTGC has burned 31 million. UFO has burned 31 million. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, so pTGC is burning at 3 times the rate right now.
Yes, but now I know why. It just hit me why. We've been purposely burning tokens with the DAO.
Correct, yeah. Yeah, the DAO has currently, for the last, I'd say month, has been buying and burning a lot of the supply of pTGC. I think we crossed 12%. I don't know, you probably know the date, a couple months ago, I would say. Maybe 1 month, between 1 and 2 months ago. And
Yeah.
just in that short amount of time, we've already bought and burned another 0.4% of the supply.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we've burned it great. We've been burning at a tremendous rate. Somebody said in a Spaces about 2 weeks ago, and I don't know why, just sometimes somebody can say something and it hits you. I mean, you may have heard it 100 times, but somebody says it just a different way and it just hits you. Like, we'll talk about burning, millions of pTGC, and it's just like, rah, rah, rah. Yeah, okay, we're burning pTGC. And this guy says, I don't remember who it was. He says, every single pTGC taken off the market is one less pTGC receiving reflections. I was like, that's correct. Wow, that's profound. Yeah, let's burn them all, man. Because then they're not receiving reflections. They can't receive staking rewards. All of it, man. That really stuck with me. I've been thinking about it a lot.
Yeah, really, I don't think there's an asset class that kind of acts like pTGC as far as like its hyper-deflationary supply that's very mature, right? That's actually had many, many, many years to just see what that outcome is. Like, Bitcoin is obviously has an inflationary supply. Gold, you can mine gold, which technically has an inflationary supply. You have to mine it, which takes energy, which has a cost. So it gives that value, for getting the gold out. But there is an increase of quantity constantly, right? I'm just very interested to see what not only a stagnant supply, but a constantly reducing supply does for price appreciation over time. We've seen assets, have deflationary supplies in crypto, but one key thing that I think hasn't been really solved is the constant demand, right? The ability to keep driving demand even when the demand slows down, to drive yourself through the slower periods. And that's what I think really makes pTGC stand out, the ability to just forcibly drive ourselves through the low demand periods into the high demand periods. And on top of that, the fact that we're on extremely undervalued blockchain is just like a massive amplifier to that whole entire math equation that I'm just super excited to see it happen, or if it happens. But even if you take away the massive amplifier opportunity that we have just being here on Pulse Chain, just the rapidly decreasing supply, injection of value constantly, what that equals over not a year and 10 months, but what that can actually equal for a longer term period. For an example, 10 years. I'm actually beyond excited to see, even after this cycle, we were talking about this earlier, we think we're about to have a good bull run here in crypto in the markets. Where does that put us a year from now? Who's still here a year from now? Where is the price of pTGC a year from now? Is Pulse Chain's price landing here again after it runs back up? Does it make lower lows like it's trended to for the last 2 years? Or does it actually start landing at higher levels? Personally, I believe it's going to start landing at higher levels, much higher levels. Where does that make this asset land? And how does the asset react to that higher price appreciation due to the market moving up and the things it's bonded to? And what does that equal, like the amount of the supply that we've bought and burnt for the last 2 years? How does that actually create more sustainability in the future? Because that buy and burn has eaten up a ton of sellers, right? Because it's not only buying the positions that people are selling or just sitting there stagnantly, but it's also removing them to never be bought again or sold again, just out of hands. And I think that scarcity factor moving forward is definitely going to create some like heavy pushes upwards, but I think it's going to help it find higher floors as well. Because I do think as we keep educating users and people, as users actually see this asset do what we predict it's going to do, like obviously there's no guarantee it's going to do what we predict it's going to do. We're literally making educated hypotheses on a system that's never been done before. But if it keeps doing what we believe it's going to do, I do believe people will start to store very, very large amounts of value on this chain in this product.
Well, with every passing month, the grays are gaining credibility. Every passing month of flawless operation, we are making an impression on Pulse Chain, the people within Pulse Chain, and eventually that impression will expand to broader crypto. Somebody made an interesting statement on the stream yesterday. They said, and it was Jonathan, his name is Jonathan Schildnick, I think was his name. Jonathan Shank, something like that. But he says, pTGC is the most trusted crypto on Pulse Chain. And that was one of those statements that just hit me. I was like, that statement summarized what I think about what I feel about pTGC. And I think that is actually a true statement. I believe that we have credibility within Pulse Chain, and it's probably gaining. I think we're gaining credibility because we're earning it with every passing month and every passing Spaces stream that we show up for.
Yeah, as far as like the product goes, the product is technically trustless for the most part, right?
Sure.
Like a
yep.
very a very large percentage of the liquidity is burnt. Like pretty much like the PLS pair, 95% of that pool is either burnt or technically locked in the smart contract, which is pretty much burnt. And then if you go through the other major pools, very, very large percentages of that liquidity is just burnt also. So you don't necessarily even need to trust that someone is going to keep that stuff there. It's burnt within the ecosystem. And then a lot of the features are trustless features, right? They're automated. Yeah. You don't need to actually hope that someone carries out these features. They just happen autonomously. And then again, even with our DAO, you don't technically even have to trust that someone is going to carry out the action for you, because if someone doesn't carry out that action, very quick the community can make the adjustment with their voting power and say, hey, this one community member didn't perform the best on behalf of the community. I don't think it's best for this wallet to actually receive these funds anymore. Let's make sure other wallets are receiving the funds that actually carry out the proposals properly.
Right.
So it's all built in a decentralized manner to actually don't need to trust anyone. The part that I think is actually most trusted isn't the protocol, it's the community, right? The community has actually shown that they trust the product so much that they're not selling rapidly on top of each other when they're massively in profits.
Yeah.
For an example, there's tons of people right now. Like I was hitting the streets, I still remember trying to educate people on this product at a 500K market cap. You know, like, hey, like mathematically, this is how it works. This is how it works. And, you know, sooner or later, people started to listen like, oh, that is how it's working. Oh, well, you have to think of it. Someone I onboarded at that time, I know I onboarded someone, they're up 200x. And they're not up 200x in a non-liquid asset. They're up 200x in an asset they could literally take a decent profit out of. The thing is the community is in a system that's trustless, so they all start to trust each other. And that's what I think the Pulse Chain community are starting to realize is when they say it's the most trustworthy system, it's trustworthy because it's trustless. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep, that's one reason. But I think they're also referring to the community, like you said, and the track record that we have, not just the people, but the product. I think the Grace currencies are gaining credibility, we're becoming the elephant in the room. You know, especially once Pulse Chain does its 10x and our liquidity web's 10x, we're gonna be unignorable.
I 100% agree. I think that pTGC has levels of the attention that they're going to get on Pulse Chain, and every time we hit it, well, if that's, you know, right now, I think between pTGC and UFO, it's like roughly 20 million in liquidity, and pTGC sitting at 100 million market cap. But what stripes do we earn, or recognition from Pulse Chain do we earn? Not that really even matters, but it shows we're kind of moving up out of even Pulse Chain and starting to get the recognition of all of when we're 10x what we are here, right? Let's say we have $200 million of liquidity for our users. The only way you get to access that liquidity is if you're a user. So you have to pretty much join the Grays, and, you know, we're welcoming with open arms, but if you want to actually be able to access that kind of liquidity web, you need to be holding the Grays. You need to be, you know, increasing your position if you want to own more, or I guess letting it just drip into your wallet. But then also, we could be sitting at a 1 billion market cap within pTGC, which then, again, like, yeah, I think gets some stripes on chain, but I think more importantly, that will start to get some stripes in the general crypto industry. And hopefully we can also do our part by being a bigger player in the crypto industry to help onboard people to Pulse Chain. Because the only way they're going to actually be able to be involved with an asset like this, or, you know, have interact getting onto this chain. Well, you have to earn Pulse or own Pulse. So next thing you know, you're now someone who's on Richard's chain. You have to technically be holding all the Richard tickers, because when you own pTGC, you're technically a holder of all of these blue chips on chain. Yeah, you came in with Pulse, but when that Pulse enters that pool, when it hits decent thresholds, it actually gets divided up amongst all the liquidity pools.
Mm-hmm. I'm hopefully going to be onboarding somebody tomorrow to Pulse Chain, and I don't think they're going to buy an enormous bag, but I'm going to encourage them to try to at least get a million pTGC, because it could change their life one day, maybe even in the next year or two. But that's a good goal, 1 million or 10 million or whatever you can get. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a good time. I'm going to start making it a little bit of a routine to constantly remind people of the utility of locking your tokens, right? And not going all out, but being responsible and reasonable with it, and looking at a portion of your portfolio as long-term and a portion of it as short-term. And if you have short-term goals, keep that liquid or in the 90-day category. Because the nice thing about the 90-day category is once you fulfill your 90 days, you actually don't have to close it down. You can just let the 90-day category forever. You can continue to earn locking rewards, and it's very, very short term. Like if you're not willing to wait 90 days, like you're really flipping stuff quick. But also look at a portion of your portfolio as a very, very long-term play. Believing in Pulse Chain as a long-term product, which then in turn you're technically believing in pTGC as a long-term project. And if over time, 10 years, you locked out 10 years, the fact that you actually had a little bit of self-discipline and locked a portion out in the early days, that could actually keep your hands off of possibly the best performing asset in life. I do believe the locking ability of an asset is a utility that is completely underrated for multiple reasons. One, because users locking the token up also helps the protocol, right? It shows that the community has long-term plan their portfolios. Also, a lot of people underrate, the most important thing about an asset is the community holding the asset. If the community holds, price goes up. If the community sells, price goes down. So it's also taking a step in the right direction as a community member, saying, I'm willing to hold a portion of my portfolio long-term for the long-term success of the protocol too. And obviously the rewards you in its own way for that time period lock. But I do think the locking mechanism is one of the things that gave Hex it's Hex's main utility, right? And we have that built in pTGC as well. And I think it deserves a little talking at times.
Yeah, I agree. Well,
it's hard to talk about it because you don't really want to tell people what to do. And, obviously some people locked out their Hex and they might have said, hey, I wish I didn't lock it out that long or what. But that's why I think ladders and sections and having educated locking strategies is a very, very important portion of that conversation as well. Yeah.
I have my pTGC split up into 3 different bags, if you will, 3 different, it's locked up, but has 3 different purposes. So I have 10-year locks, and those are, 9 years plus, at least one day into 9 years. So you're getting that. So I'm getting that 100% reward on those locks. And then I have locking ladder, annual locking ladder that's all the way back to, the beginning of next year. And then I have some 90-day locks that are now mature. And those 90-day locks are where I get to, take some feathers from the golden goose and make myself a fluffy down pillow with. But that's how I've split it up into 3 different pots, if you will.
Yeah, 100%. I think if you plan on DCAing in over time to PTGC, you could probably grab a bag and just kind of pull something off, and then learn more over time, and then with your other bags create locking strategies. But if you are getting into the asset and you're kind of thinking like, no, I'm not going to really DCA, this is kind of my one and done, definitely before you lock it, talk with some people in the community about what locking strategies they've done, because we've heard the different locking strategies. We've even heard strategies where they've done a bunch of 10-year locks, but they've just separated them all. So if they have to early unlock, they don't have to early unlock their whole bag.
Yes.
They can early lock it in 10% sections, or, so let's say you only need 2, you don't have to nuke your whole bag for the 30% early unlock fee. It's just portions. And there's a ton of different strategies in a different topic. One actually has specific questions.
Yeah.
We can go over. But that being said, if anyone has any questions, feel free to raise your hand and come up. I'm happy to bring you up. These spaces are for questions of the community, not just for me and Banana the Ramble. So
yeah, sorry.
Please feel free to come up if you have them.
There is a lot to locking also. I mean, there really is. But yeah, jump up, guys.
And I'll say one thing real quick that is completely underrated on the locking. I didn't think this was going to be a specific, huge selling point of it, but I've seen it firsthand, probably 5 times now, where people's wallets got compromised, and the people who compromised their wallets did not know how to get their PTGC out of the lock.
Yep.
So they ended up leaving the PTGC stuck in the lock. And these users have actually gotten to go back into their wallets days later and recover the PTGC and send it to the new wallet after the person who compromised their wallet has left with the rest of their funds.
Right. Well,
which
go ahead.
Is crazy utility if you think about it, but it's not a guarantee. Obviously they can smarten up and figure out how to get the locks out, but a lot of these guys, they just think they're stuck tokens. They don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
So I've actually seen it multiple times where it's actually saved people's PTGC from hack.
Now, wouldn't that apply to staked PTGC also, not just locked? I think.
Yeah, they obviously can't sell it if it's staked. The situations that I've seen firsthand, I believe they were talking about locked PTGC.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they meant staked PTGC or whatnot. But
what happens is that PTGC is visible in the wallet. You stake it, but you can see the tokens in your wallet. So a thief will see the tokens and not know that they need to go to connect that wallet to the DApp, and do all that. We shouldn't even really talk about it. It's built-in theft protection. It's pretty awesome.
Well, it happens all the time too, guys. Too, with our holders. If they want to sell, a lot of the time they come in, hey, PTGC's broken, I can't sell. It's no, it's because you don't know what you're doing. It is a fail-safe.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, 100%. You have your own community that knows they locked it at some point, that forget how to unlock it, and if they've locked and they just feel like it's stuck. So it's tricking literally people to not sell their own bags sometimes, is the funny thing. But yeah, so I've seen it multiple times where people's wallets have gotten compromised and they've been able to go back and recover their PTGC. Well, every other asset's gotten taken from them. Obviously, that's not a good situation to be in, but it's awesome that one of the features within PTGC, not per design, has actually protected their funds even from.
Yeah, it's alien tech, man.
Yeah,
the Greys built that in. They influenced the. Yeah, they did that. Paul Sachs is asking, has Kong made a chart about a forward projection of when PTDC achieves 90% of its supply burned?
No, I don't think Kong's made that.
No, that's impossible. That's impossible to do.
Okay.
For an example, like this it's not realistic because there's obviously holders, I think, that are just like stubborn with their bags and they're specifically in it for the APY and the divs. And it could even go up crazy X's beyond anyone could imagine. There could be tons of liquidity, and I still think they would just take in their APY, use that as their way of living life, and really hold on to the asset like the real value that it is.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if they believe that there isn't going to be a lot of other assets that exist in this world that actually perform like this asset. Like, I do believe it's checking a lot of boxes that people have been looking for in value storage for technically thousands of years, because people have been trying to store value for thousands of years in scarce material stocks and whatnot. But
yeah.
What happens then, it just keeps pushing the price up so hard on itself over time, which is just a win situation for people who are involved, and technically not a win situation for people who aren't involved. And that's, kind of I guess my apology to anyone who finds this asset once it's already up another 1,000x, 10,000x, that you didn't find it sooner.
Back on that locking topic, 39.7% of pTGC is staked and locked. That's almost 40% of the tokens. So that provides that makes for a very stable ecosystem and token supply,
100%. Yeah, that's kind of where I was getting at. Is I think there's a large amount of holders who have very, very long-term time horizons for this asset. And yeah, for sure that some of those locks will get closed over time. Like, that's guaranteed. But I definitely think the community of the Grays obviously know how to hold their bags and know what they hold. It wouldn't have ran to a 300, 200 mil, whatever it got to market cap, if the community didn't know what they owned.
Yeah. Well, how I was saying last week that I'm expecting something to happen at any time because there's been so much activity on Pulse Chain with Richard Hart and, well, so much activity in crypto in the last 6 months. And I was really hoping and anticipating that something would happen last week, and nothing did, unless I missed it. So maybe something exciting will happen this week.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of anything interesting I saw. I see some people talking about possibly highest of stakes number 2 and them possibly leaning towards that. I also saw some clips that hadn't been released until recently of Richard, which I thought that was kind of cool. Did you see those clips?
No, I didn't.
I forget exactly what it was, but I think they said if they get like 5 million impressions or 500 million impressions, they were going to create a subscriber platform, and the subscriber platform was going to be able to watch some of the deleted scenes of the Highest of Stakes movie.
Oh, okay.
And then, which is kind of cool, right? Like some of the stuff that they just didn't get into the movie, but they have edited, or they kind of just have, and they just need to go through. And then I've also seen some talks about some funds being put together for a Highest of Stakes number 2, but I don't know how serious that is or anything like that. I obviously hope if they do that, they wait for some price appreciation here on the chain.
Yes, but they don't need to wait for price appreciation to just get started, and maybe they already have. I don't know. There's something in the
I'd say the other thing is just the stablecoin talk. I'd say that's probably the most interesting thing. And then you said that who said that they're moving forward with that? Someone in the comments?
Yes. Who was it? Give me a second. I'll lay eyes on it. We'll give him credit. Backwards Hat Dad. And let's see. I actually pulled it up. Give me a second. I got to go over to my Twitter. Genius Act. This is 43 minutes ago. Genius Act passes 60 vote threshold, making it filibuster proof. Both Senator Loomis and Senator Warren on the floor. Strongly symbolic big win. Okay. And then the Senate has voted to end debate and move forward with considering the Genius Act. This clears the way for a full discussion and vote on the bill. So there we have it. It's going forward. But that's a negative for crypto.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's up, everybody? Yeah, I think it's a huge negative, especially when you're thinking about DeFi and custody and the things that make, the things that establish trust, right? Not having a blacklist function. There's these things that are eroding away at trust. And we try to do our best here to eliminate those things. Yeah. So it kind of stands against the principles, right?
Yeah. Yep. Decentralization, peer-to-peer, all that, self-custody. It's my tokens. It's my yield. Keep your hands off of it, That is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. But
not your keys, not your coins, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But backwards Hat Dad said, it should pump Bitcoin. So that's a positive.
Oh.
Todd, what it really does is it reminds me to go back to first principles with Bitcoin. In other words, people have gotten comfortable not talking in Satoshi terms. People have still been talking in dollar terms, right?
Yeah.
But in crypto, if you want to be decentralized, you can't care that your money is in a Satoshi, and it's interesting. That was only going to be a matter of time, that they allowed you to operate as the dollar in a decentralized way. But you don't have to worry about that if you don't own that token. So it's going to be interesting for sure. It's not a shoo-in, though. I mean, there's every so often these things, they come up, right? And they feel like and they seem like, it's a horrible thing and this is absolutely going to happen. and then you have the crypto industry, which is a massive industry, with their lobbyists get in there and then they do their educating as to why that's not a great thing. And, I hope that's what ends up happening. Because otherwise, every chain's going to have to adopt a centralized form of the stable.
Okay. It might be time to call our senator or congressman or whoever it is that we're supposed to call. I've done that a number of times over the years, quite a number of times.
Like you wonder for things like a liquidity on ETH, something that's immutable and can't be turned off, right?
Yeah, what they should be doing is the USDC lawyer team should be calling Richard Hart's lawyers, and they should be lawyering up every single one of them. Every stablecoin should be lawyering up. So it'll be interesting if we see some news on that break. They may very well lose the case again. But aren't they? They're passing it through Congress, right? So I mean, maybe Congress is just going to pass it. Wouldn't that be something? Yeah.
I mean, is it? Has anybody read the actual language? Is the language that it cannot be decentralized, or is the language that it just must be backed 1-to-1?
That's a great question. I haven't had time to read it yet.
I didn't really read the whole thing. It's really long, but I ChatGPT'd like a summary, and ChatGPT basically just said it just has to be 1-to-1.
Okay, so maybe it's more of a compliance issue, in which I would support it. If it's a compliance issue to make sure another FTX doesn't happen, and that every USD coin is actually backed by $1, then yeah, I would be in support of that.
I'm in support of that too. I mean, that who wants to be the guy holding the fractional reserved part of the asset? Not me.
Exactly. It's like, why do you want you to store your money in a bank where they're 98% illiquid?
The funny thing is, we do it all damn day long.
Yeah. It functions somehow. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it could be a good thing. I would like it for it to be a good thing.
Yeah, it's always in the defining of the terms. I think with crypto, everybody always just immediately, because just the nature of the journey, goes to the negative mindset.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's very natural to do.
Yeah, from what little bit I heard, they were talking about like, that USD coin won't be able to be the one that provides a stable coin. It'll actually have to be like a vetted, approved entity to provide a stable coin. And so they will, from what I heard, they were going to make all current stable coins illegal and then get their friends to create others, So that could have been completely wrong. You never know what you hear, like if it's true or not, right? Like,
but what I don't like
is
the inability to earn yield. And I think that would be probably a leap to believe that, moving into an age where even banks now are starting to pay out 3 to 5% in legacy. So I would imagine you're going to have at least a mimicry of the best rates for legacy there.
Zen Derek is asking on YouTube about the initial liquidity into pTGC. Would you mind talking about that briefly for him?
I don't recall exactly what it was, but there was pretty much a web created at the beginning of pTGC. A lot of the assets that were put into that web were the RH tokens, and then I'd say the PDI, Teddy Bear, Atropa, and some of the blue chips that were kind of more of the alt tokens at the time of launch of pTGC. And then liquidity has veered from that, is the fact that we've spent the majority of the energy of the DAO adding to RH tickers for the most part. Mm-hmm. And then also a few new legs that have came forth, like Most and Pump, etc. At the beginning of pTGC, the liquidity that was added, the majority of it was burnt. I think it was like a month after the launch of pTGC, or maybe a couple weeks or something like that.
Okay. Yeah, that's how I understand it too.
If that's what he was asking, I think that's what he was asking. Like what we were working with at that time, or
actually specifically, he asked what percentage of the tokens were originally put into liquidity.
I would say pretty much all of them, besides what was airdropped to people who held TGC on Ethereum, since the fork of TGC didn't work due to there being 3 functioning smart contracts that interacted with technically stablecoins, and then we also made some adjustments, but pretty much code coming over in the fork. So we had to redeploy it as our technically forked over copy, but then we airdropped everyone who had TGC as a 1-for-1 over here on pTGC, and then also we did a Zen burn as well. So you're able to burn your Zen and get an airdrop of pTGC as well, which was kind of based on some of the first principles of crypto, where you were able to mine Zen for free, which then made it to where you something you got for free, technically making it to where you could get pTGC for free, aiming for the goal of a very well distributed supply from the beginning of the asset. Of course, someone could come in and buy large amounts in those early days and so on and so forth, just like any asset if you get in early. But those were a couple of the ideas that we're aiming for with the distribution process of pTGC.
But the easy answer, my easy answer is all of it. Is all of it. All of it, other than holders that needed their airdrop and people that were willing to burn some Zen for it, which most of them sold off very early on. So, easy answer is pretty much all of it.
Who else wants to come up and make a comment? Who's got the, we're all standing at the water cooler. Who's got the scuttlebutt? Who's got the news? Anything? Any questions? Comments?
It's kind of an interesting time. You know, we're kind of in a melancholy state,
I'd say.
In the industry at large, really.
Mm-hmm.
So you're gonna 10x that energy on Pulse Chain, right? But it's still interesting that we can still witness the machine. It's amazing to me that with such low volume on Pulse Chain and just in general, like it's like what Zen talks about a lot of the time, like this is like a city. It's like Austin, like 3 months into it being built. You know, you're building the city, you're building the shops, you're building the grocery stores before there's anybody there to shop in it. But the performance of the ecosystem in the midst of the headwinds, in the midst of the downward trajectory of the assets it's bonded with and the PVP and just so many of the headwinds. Man, I just keep thinking to myself, what happens when the headwinds become the tailwinds?
Mm-hmm. You know, it's interesting you say that the volume is low, and I agree with you. You know, things are really slow right now. It's just,
and I don't
like
just mean, I just mean grades, brother. I mean, period.
Yeah.
You know?
However, I just looked in my records in August. The average daily volume on Pulse Chain was 10 million. In April, it was 30 million. It's a 3x. You know, and I don't know what it was today, but I mean, so we're still a 3x up in volume, but it's very slow. So I don't know. It's definitely, it's kind of it's a strange time for me. Really, I'm right there with you. It's very unusual. Just right before there's a storm, there tends to be a calm. I hope that's what's going to happen. Yeah, the volume yesterday on Pulse Chain was 23.6 million.
Do you know what the volume for pTGC on average was? Like August, July, June last year?
Yes. The volume in August on pTGC, on average daily volume was $30,000. In April, it was $260,000. So that's a number of X's. About 9 X's.
That's the part that sometimes scares me, right?
A good scare or a negative scare?
A good scare, right?
Okay, good.
Calculations that we multiply out, and me and Mando has actually even had this conversation because he's asked me about this. I usually use the number of an even calculation out, like as volume increases on chain. You gave us the example of the volume increasing 3x for Pulse Chain in general, but our average on PC 8x off of that 3x.
Yep.
And that has a few reasons, right? Like it's not just a multiplier of the volume. We've also grown as an ecosystem. We've also added liquidity. But you can factor all that math in always, right? We're always going to grow as an ecosystem. We're always going to be increasing in liquidity. Maybe not always increasing in price, but we have tended to trend upwards and to the mechanics. So I like to make educated guesses like, okay, well, as volume increases on chain, what you're telling me right now is when Pulse Chain 3x in volume, X'd in volume.
Yeah, we 8x'd.
That's super interesting data, right?
Yes.
So like a lot of people are kind of like, volume feels low right now on pTGC. But it's like, well, if you remember where we came from, it's 8x higher. And that shows that the machine is actually running better, even though Pulse Chain is at the same price it probably was in August.
Same price, yes, different volume.
Different, but listen to what I'm saying. Same price, different volume.
Yep.
pTGC landed higher in price, higher volume, connected to something that's same price. So
yes.
What happens, Amanda was just saying this, what happens when it actually becomes a chain that's working with us instead of against us? If volume increases on chain, we see via past data to present data that naturally our volume should increase. Just mechanically, that's how the machine works. We've seen if prices just land at the same price of something we're connected to, okay, our volume still increases as long as volume's increasing on the chain, even if the price of Pulse Chain doesn't even go up. What happens if the price of Pulse Chain starts working with us? Well, we've actually even seen that too. When the price of Pulse Chain starts increasing, we actually see in volume because now they need to move more money to fix prices because there's more liquidity, so on and so forth, right? It's all relative. Well, when that happened on Pulse Chain, we know where pTGC's price is. Just look around January.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I find data like that very, very interesting, right? Like
it's exciting.
Last time Pulse Chain was at the lows. Yeah, it's exciting. The volume was much lower on pTGC, so we can actually see our system getting bigger and stronger. Also, same goes for UFO. Like UFO volume's pretty low on UFO. Pretty much all of it's mechanical volume right now with very little human interaction. But if you remember last time there was very little human interaction, this was right before the huge 45x push. And it was lower than it is today. So that shows you UFO is growing as well.
Yeah, I have a, just read this real quick. Some of you may have seen this today, but I'm just going to read this quick summary. Can you hear me, or did you lose me?
I can hear you.
I had a call come in. Yeah, give me 1 second. Okay, it says, I'm sure you talked about the buy and burn from today, which was just over $16,200, 400 million PLS worth. The summary says another 40 million pTGC bought and burned. Understand when this happens, the 400 million pulse that was used to buy the tokens was given to token holders. Then those tokens are burned, reducing supply. This increases holders' percentage of the yield pools as supply diminishes. I don't know when this will happen, but at some point in the future, the system will hit a supply shock as sellers are exhausted, but the machine is forced to continue to take 100% of the revenue being generated and buy and burn supply, not only increasing yield, but driving price action much higher. Right now, the pTGC smart contracts are basically buying weak hands and short-term investors out of their positions. This will inevitably run into a brick wall at some point where sellers are all out. Long-term holders are remaining and the system cannot be stopped. I like to call this the grayscale tipping point. This will only ramp up with the success of Richard Hart's blockchain, which you were just talking about. You know, so you're always going to have some form of selling, but at some point, and I don't know if the protocol has to go lower first before this happens, but at some point, I just see this moment where you run out of the people that initially took positions that had big positions, if whatever percentage of those individuals are, that were willing to relinquish whatever a percentage of the positions that they own. And when those individuals have exhausted what they're willing to let go, what happens? Because the only mathematical reality from that point forward would be that the only thing that can happen is people have to come in and buy at that price. And if nobody's left willing to sell substantial amounts of their portfolio position back into the pool, and the mechanism that is constantly generating revenue in the smart contracts is being forced, all that revenue is being forced back into the tokens, at that point, pTGC hits a tipping point that we've never seen before. I don't know when that will be. I don't know if that will be this cycle. I don't know if it will be the next cycle. But there will come a point where, in my opinion, that will happen, and it will be astronomical to watch that. Obviously, there's no guarantees of anything, but if Richard's pulse chain is successful, and we see a successful chain moving forward over the next, this cycle and next cycle, it's going to be very interesting to see where that tipping point is reached.
The great thing about it is that if you were to freeze time right now and we were not to have any more holders, no new buyers, no new sellers, everything just freezes. The assets that we're paired with, and the pools that they have would move up and down against each other, causing our pools to be balanced. So the bots and the income and the 5% tax and all that stuff coming into PTGC would continue it would continue without users, right? So,
and that's what I mean. So Ty, if we get to a point, whether it's higher or lower, where whoever's willing to sell their bag is out, or they're just not willing to sell any more of it, that means that the only thing left at that point is for new buyers to come in, and for the machine that's constantly bringing in billions of pulse chain and repumping it back into the system to basically be acting like a big god whale that's constantly buying up the price, right? So unless people are willing to relinquish the tokens at that point, it hits just, it's basically like hitting like a megalodon floor, right? Where it finally reaches that first mega floor. And at that point, it's like, holy shit, you know, because we stare at these KPIs all day long. And I think that we will recognize when we hit that grayscale tipping point. I think that we will know, oh shit, that's it. Because we'll be able to look at the wallets and look at the wallet distribution. And in the same way that I'm sure the OA has a spreadsheet of every pulse chain position that's not their position that can impact the price, we can take a look and say, wow, these positions are basically out almost now, right? But the system is operating the way that it does. It's probably going to be operating at a higher velocity because that's what it's been doing this whole time. Like, remember when we were looking at $20,000 volume days, $30,000, $40,000 days, like, and that was the doldrums, right? Well, I think today is like what, $180,000, $200,000 volume day,
right.
But that was back when we were at a $5 million market cap, not a $120 million market cap. It's just interesting. It's just an interesting, future-looking event, kind of like an event horizon for, PTGC's ecosystem that I like thinking about.
Yeah, the machine's still working good. And from a technical perspective, this stopping point here, in my videos, I was showing this is kind of where the technical stopping point would be. And the fact that we're holding in the consolidating here is good. And really, if you hold 3,500 or higher, that's a retest of previous breakouts, and you're finding support there. So looks good, all while supply is being burnt away like you guys were talking about. And Pulse Chain still has green candles.
Yeah.
Big
Looks like
green every day. It's a couple percent, So, I mean, I think patience here, and this is a great level. Some people are getting out of positions, whatever they're doing. But from a technical perspective, things look great. You just had a 100% rally off the lows, cooling off for a bit, and getting ready for the next move higher. And if Pulse Chain goes up 10, 20, 30%, PTGC is going to follow and going to be doing so with smaller supply and bigger volume days than did at lower valuations.
The issue is, Nick, is that when you look at the token and you look at the market cap and then you look at the volume, if you're looking at it from just a normal token standpoint, you're looking at it and going, what the hell's going on here? How is this token $122 million market cap, paying out? How is it like, how is this bullish? There's like $180,000 of volume, right? Because there's so much more behind the mechanics of this system, as you know. Most people are just looking at it from that meme coin, a couple categories of thought. And I think that's where people really miss the opportunity here on PTGC. Because
the metrics
aren't there.
Exactly. The metrics aren't the same because people are used to the metrics they've been staring at with BSC Network, Ethereum, Solana, and Base Chain. And the thing is, those metrics are fudged, guys. All right. I've been an advisor on projects. What's one of the things you do on a zero tax token on any of those chains? You hire a market maker. So they're used to seeing these higher volume numbers compared to market capitalizations, but that's because you're looking at a zero tax token, and projects understand that in order to draw those attentions is you've got to pay a market maker, and there's a market maker that is essentially arbitrage trading the chart, not doing much, hoping to make a little bit of profits to put it back in the project, but just to manipulate volume prices on a daily basis higher, because that's how you get training on DEX tools and DEX Screener, and that's how you get the eyes of these quick traders and these meme coiners. So on Pulse Chain, that isn't as big and prevalent of a thing, but also with pTGC, having lower volume is still a fine metric because that volume is taking 5% off the top and injecting it back into the system. So I think it just takes a little bit of time for people to wrap as they're moving to Pulse Chain, because there's a lot of people who are bridging into Pulse Chain for the first time and taking a look at metrics. They got to rewire the brain and how they look at metrics as far as trading volume, because maybe they don't realize a lot of that is fudged numbers. It's real trading volume, but it's paid to a market maker, and they're essentially trying to break even or not lose a lot of money to artificially pump those numbers. pTGC trade volume is all real volume because you're not going to pay a market maker to lose 5% on it. And every dollar that goes through, 5 cents goes back into the protocol to help find a new floor, pay out to holders, and pump the price. So I think it just will take time for people to rewire the brain, reevaluate these metrics, and to start seeing why pTGC is still one of the best performing assets on Pulse Chain. And yeah, you've had a big drawdown due to liquidity ties to PDI and Atropa. That's fine, because there's tons of economic power, tons of passive income paid out, and tons of tokens burned up. And they'll come to realize it. I think people, you still see like, holy cow, within that month, we went up like 10x or whatever when we ran to 350 million. And they have to understand, you got to recreate basis here. We're up triple digits off the lows. It takes a little bit of time. But pTGC is still going to be one of the best performers if you believe in Pulse Chain, because you guys have 10 million liquidity or whatever it is. Hart's Law is going to come into effect. Token economics are going to come into effect. And it's really, in my opinion, where you should park assets. If you don't know which blue chip to choose, just choose pTGC. That's what I tell people to do. It's just it's a play with millions of dollars of backed liquidity on the blue chips. And the token economics are, what every project should strive for. Sorry if that's a little long-winded on the volumes, but, I've been there, done that, advising projects to grab a market maker almost instantly to fudge the volume numbers to try to present a better picture to traders. And you don't do that with tax tokens.
Yeah, market making is also just very indicative of fakeness. Usually those tokens tank in price pretty quickly.
Yeah, one thing that Rich said back in the day was a lot of people don't realize that volume necessarily doesn't always mean it's a good thing for a token. A lot of times, half that, or pretty much all the time, that means there's a lot of people willing to sell that asset as well. Really, the most important thing for an asset is the fact that you have a community that's willing to hold that asset at dollar amounts. And you don't see volume when people are willing to hold assets at highs or lows. Of course, our system thrives off volume, and we mechanically want it, and we see it as a positive when people buy or sell. But really, the most important thing for price growth and longevity sustainability is having a community that doesn't necessarily always want to trade it, but also wants to hold it long term. Quick on something you were talking about a little bit ago. You're talking about how there's like a tipping point of some sort for pTGC where there just really isn't going to be any sellers left, and the machine is technically buying the little amount of sellers out right now. Sooner or later, those are gone, then price is forced upwards. And especially when markets come back, we have to remember that same thing's going on with Pulse Chain right now. Pulse Chain is going through that exact same process. The price wouldn't be here on Pulse Chain if there wasn't sellers. Literally, Richard said this in his video. It was hilarious.
Sell pressure.
Yeah, hello, sell pressure. Like, why are you crying about price? It's you. You know what I mean? It's hilarious. Price is only down on assets that we're in, like pTGC, if Pulse Chain's going down, which is our own community sell pressure, or by pTGC going down, which is our own community sell pressure. Eventually, it hits a level where people just aren't willing to sell at those prices anymore. Is that where we are on Pulse X right now? It feels around there, right? We hit a lot lower than here a month ago or whatever. Like, that could be that number where people are just not willing to let go of their Pulse X. Very quickly, that number can increase, right? Like, out of nowhere, you can hit that zone where it's like, oh my gosh, all the people that thought that, that were willing to sell at that price are now absorbed. If it's absorbed by an entity that is willing to buy the tokens up at any price, like the automated functions in the smart contract or the DAO, or new users, or, Richard, or, however he plans on doing it on his end. About our end, like, we have the DAO, we have the smart contracts, and we have the fact that we're onboarding people into this amazing product at discounted price. Well, out of nowhere, these prices can just be gone, right? And momentum can change really drastically. So it's not only what we're going on with pTGC. This is any asset, right? Like, after any asset kind of finds their top and comes down, you kind of have to go through the consolidation period where you're educating existing holders and they're either increasing their bags, or you're getting new holders in and they're increasing first bags, and you're letting a few people out that possibly aren't in the system long term, or were in it for just a quick couple X's, or now are attracted to a new shiny object. This is any asset that exists, not only in blockchain, but also in traditional finance and whatnot as well.
I remember not too long ago, and I remember Crypto Stylist was in the specific space, and some other people, and I think we were around about a 30, maybe $40 million market cap, maybe even less. And we were just looking at the numbers, and that week I was just really looking at the KPIs. And I came in and I said, I just don't see a world where pTGC doesn't hit $100 million market cap soon. And, as history goes, we went up to, a $350 million market cap, right? And this was probably, I don't know, maybe 8 months ago now. I don't know how long ago that was, but we had never been to a $100 million market cap before, let alone a $350 million market cap. Pulse Chain's on a triple bottom, and now here we are at $120 million market cap, and it feels like this is kind of the floor for pTGC at $120 million market cap now, right? And it's the tortoise versus the hare kind of a thing. Here's why. Because the volume on Pulse Chain comes in spurts. It comes in waves. It's like if you're surfing and you have to wait for sets of waves to come in, and then once those sets are gone, you could sit there for freaking an hour, 2 hours in the water, hoping you don't get ate by a great white shark, right? Waiting for the next set of energy to come in. And I see that that's very similar to what it's like with the ebbs and flows of the energy on Pulse Chain. This system turns into a monster when Pulse Chain sees economic energy. When it's relaxed and it's kind of like a glassy sea that we all love to be on as well, the system calms down. You can kind of just drink your pina colada or, be on your little, paddle board, and it's peaceful, but it's still doing its thing. It's still generating billions of pulse. It's still working to make holders wealthy, right? But there's no guarantee of the time frame of that. So that's the interesting thing about the Grace currency is it truly is a unique cryptocurrency that is 100% benevolent, but you can study the ebbs and flows of it based on what it is writing, based on what it is on top of, right? And those energy bursts, those energy waves that are coming in. There's only so much economic energy on Pulse Chain currently. There's only so many users. There's only so many projects people can go into. And so this is the, you know, it's not timing the market, it's time in the market situation. There's no question about it. But
Yeah.
I do believe, and then I'll end it, I do believe that the people that got in early and have been here and have some substantial positioning, I do believe that they do know what they own, because we've got 20 months of being able to actually watch this amazing new type of cryptocurrency work. So that's why I said that I think that at some point people will, whether it's this cycle or the next cycle, there's just gonna come a point where they're either all washed out and the system just takes it to the next level again and to the next level again. I mean, mathematically, that's what has to happen. There's never a day where there's more tokens. There's only ever a day where there's less tokens. There's never a day where there's not more economic energy coming in after those tokens. Whether it's a lot or whether it's a little, it doesn't matter, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to add that I think a direct correlation that we'll see is the value of Pulse and the number of projects on Pulse chain. Because for every project, they're gonna bring up Pulse chain. So collectively, with 5,000 projects together, we will all bring up Pulse chain. So that's going to be great for us. And then after people get rugged and frauded and whatever, then they'll probably find their way to pTGC like most people have.
Well, what ends up happening too is that let's just say that the cores just do a 4x revaluation from here. What happens now is me as an investor, when I go to sell something, when I go to sell some of my position or some of my yield, the chart is impacted 4 times less than it's impacted even now. Because we're swimming in 4 times the weight of liquidity at that point, right? And so that's why I think that people that really grasp the weight of liquidity, man, once Richard's chain goes, and I do believe it's going to go, and it's interesting because I saw a video today where he was talking to Kinetic about it generally takes a minimum of 2 years after you deploy something legitimate before you start to see a market develop. And we basically just crested 2 years, right? So it's just interesting where we are. But just imagine Pulse chain just goes up, the Hex goes up, the Ink goes up, the PulseX goes up, the bigger things that we're tied to that will go up even more than that go up. And all of a sudden, we're sitting on, like what we've seen before, $100 million of liquidity. Well, now you're basically one of the biggest projects in all of crypto in terms of on-chain liquidity. That's really the next big move, guys.
Yeah, and to that point, what's it going to look like at the beginning of next cycle with the data we're going to have and be like, here's how big the liquidity got, here's what that means, right? Here's how many tokens we've burned during the bear market,
Yeah, I just when you're sitting on top of that revalued liquidity web, and it's worth $100 million plus, that's when you wish you never sold your damn tokens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Different people have different reasons, needs, things come up.
No, but you got to admit, man, the conversation is just different with this ecosystem. It's just a different conversation because we've got 20 months. of watching this new amazing organism built on top of a blockchain. And it's 100% benevolent. 100% goes back to the people, right? 100% of the economic energy goes to the perfect places it's supposed to go. And then there's pivotability. But we've been having, it's been nothing but freaking headwinds up to this point. So once that revaluation takes place, it's going to be interesting, man.
Mando, I was going to ask you about your surfing analogy. Did you surf at all growing up, or have you surfed at all?
Oh, yeah. I grew up Santa Barbara County, man.
So, yeah, me too. So I grew up surfing a lot. The funny thing about that analogy, and I'm sure you can relate to this, is when you're sitting out there, you become impatient, right? And this is kind of, so then you'll like sometimes suck inside a little bit, and you'll try to catch a smaller wave or a shittier wave. And when you're busy chasing the junk is when the perfect set rolls by, and you're just stuck on the inside and you just get worked. And then all you needed to do was just sit on the outside where you knew it was going to break anyways, and just patiently wait for the right wave to come to you, wait for the market to come to you. So I don't know. I just was wondering if you have surfed and you've ever, obviously been in that situation before where you get kind of bored sitting out there waiting for the set. So then you kind of go to a different break or whatever, just trying to chase something. But then while you're busy chasing is when the set rolls in and you're just on the wrong wave.
Well, I've been bored waiting for those sets to come in, and I've also been scared shitless waiting for those sets to come in. Freaking triple overhead, man. But yeah, I think it's a good analogy, right? Because nothing good in life, like, that's legitimate, that's sustainable, it doesn't happen instantly, right? I mean something that actually remains once it hits, But when you're on Pulse Chain, which is a new blockchain, and there's been nothing but headwinds, there's been no tailwinds whatsoever, there's been no wind behind your back pushing you along. It's been nothing but just BS up to this point. It's going to be very nice at some point to see that reverse. And I do believe 1,000%, and it's why I'm here, that will happen. And I think it's going to happen in a big way. When I was looking the other day at just, I think some guy bridged in like 500 ETH and just started buying up certain positions of core tickers and things like this. I mean, people always talk about, Sack Daddy pumping bags and stuff like this, but it doesn't take much money to make Pulse Chain really go. And when you're on Deck Screener, it's already in the top 6 to top 10 of blockchains in volume now. Wow. But in terms of price, we focus so much on price, but the reality is that the price is what it is. The price was set at a certain price in the sacrifice. It went down to the biggest sacrificers' price. That's kind of a normal thing to do. So now we wait for adoption. We build. We do what we're doing. But the interesting thing is that look at what for all you who've been here from the beginning, we can get really complacent because that's just the nature of humans, is to get greedy and is to get unthankful and is to get complacent and just, if you were born in a kingdom, to you it's just a kingdom, where everybody else is struggling and you're just being fed grapes and you're the prince or the princess, right? That's all you know. But on Pulse Chain, pTGC has done so well compared to most other things in such an favorable environment. The reason why I just keep bringing it up is because, my God, what happens? What happens when the wind gets blown into the sales, man. You know, I wish that we had technology that we could build a visual representation of what's happening live in our liquidity pools with literally every transaction. Boom, this is going there. You're actually seeing it live happening in your watch. It would be astronomical to watch that. It would probably be the best recruiting tool to this protocol that you could ever build. Because once you see that, you cannot unsee it.
That the sale is constantly getting bigger.
Yeah, I know.
The LP. Yeah, sales is continually around the clock getting bigger. And it's protocol driven. There's no interrupting it. Yeah, no, I like the analogies, man. That's so cool. I've never looked at it that way. Like, I even saw like a visual of like all the, if you were to visualize all the different tokens as ships according to the size of their sail, meaning the size of the liquidity, put them all together and try visualize the size of pTGC UFO's sails compared to their ship.
Yeah, man.
I think it'd be a funny way to illustrate it.
Yeah, it'd be like that Mexico ship that freaking ran into the bridge the other day. Oh, man. Sails were too big, dude.
Imagine what it costs to repair something like that. As somebody just burned like a couple $100,000, you know? Yeah. They might as well have just set it on fire, right? I think Gracie, allow people to hold part of that cup, and you know, after cycle one, allow people to do things that they've always wanted to do. Right? I think we're going to get a lot of that, a lot of positive feedback. Hey, I bought my first house. Hey, I always wanted this or whatever. Always wanted to go here. You know, I think success. There's going to be so many success stories, right? It's going to be so starting cycle one with a whole bunch of known success stories, a larger community base, a larger, you know, LP with fewer tokens available than what we ended the bull market with.
Well,
I think
one of the biggest things too to remember is that this is real, because crypto's not going anywhere. It's now been formalized. It's been ingrained into the financial system. It started with Bitcoin. You have a very favorable environment from the biggest governments in the world. You know, they want to make sure that the stable coins are good and stuff like that. But they don't care that we're doing this crypto thing. It used to be to where we had to be afraid. Are they going to go after us because we're exercising our freedom of speech and freedom of movement and freedom of whatever on chain? No, they're not. Right? So when you look at how many people are involved now versus how many more people will be involved in 4 years, 8 years, 10 years, 12 years, right? And as long as you're on those L1s and in those assets that, you know, the thing is too, is that like, you know, there's a big talk about Bitcoin and XRP and the ones that are going to get adopted with the banking system, with the ISO compatibility and all this different stuff. But the truth is like unless you got in early on like those very first ones, the people who got richest were the ones that were active on L1s. They weren't the ones, you know, the people who second cycle, third cycle after DeFi summer were the ones who were active on actual chains and we're actual operators on chains. So now we're sitting here now, and the Grays is the first of its kind on any blockchain. And it's on a massive, robust layer 1 that mimics the second biggest cryptocurrency in the world that can adopt every EIP. And the funny thing is, too, is this chain could be forked onto any new technology, even off of an old EVM2, just like it was before. So as new technologies come, Richard can just fork that on to the brand new one. It's going to be very interesting. Hey guys, we got any questions or comments or anything else?
I would just say that everybody listening, you're listening for a reason, and you're in the right spot with your economic power, with some of your capital for your Pulse Chain portfolio, that's for sure. And have some patience here. Let this thing reconsolidate, continue to grind higher. And then when Pulse Chain starts having really big green candles, pTGC is not going to be far behind. So, we get a little spoiled when we saw that run up. You said it was really peaked in February. So really it was between like December to February. Those 2 months were wild. And that's going to happen again. But in between all that, you got to have slow grinds up, find new lows, collect your APR, compound that reward, and you're going to win. Understand that Bitcoin makes a bulk of its gains 10 days out of the year. So the same thing applies to other altcoins and whatnot. Sometimes you have to have a little patience. It's time in the market. You got to be hodling these things to catch the big gains and get the massive rewards. Also when Pulse Chain was finding its really big drop, pTGC consolidated for quite a long time. I don't think it's going to consolidate that long again. We're already seeing economic push upward. But people forget how long you had to wait. You had to wait like 6, 7, 8 months of sideways chop, compounding rewards. And then before you knew it, you went from $20 million market cap to $350 million. So explosive moves higher, take consolidations, because like Mando was saying, you got to shake out the weak hands or the desperate hands in order for the tokens to find their way into stronger hands and for the machine to do its job. And that's when you explode higher.
Well, Nick, what do you think, man, realistically? What is your target for PLS this cycle?
Well, I was saying from the most conservative thing, like when we talked about this, and I was saying most conservative would be SAC rate times 10. And obviously, I think Pulse Chain is positioned because I think, first of all, let's start with this. I think Bitcoin 244,000 by the end of 2025. And I also think this will be the first year we break the 4-year cycle, the halving cycle, but it extends and we actually get Q1, Q2 bullish top for 2026 for this cycle. So I think it does extend. I think this will be the first extension of the bull market, only because that is what we saw out of gold. When gold got its ETF, it went on like a 10-year bull market. Now, I don't think Bitcoin's going to have a 10-year bull market this cycle, but I think it extends due to institutional money, institutional demand, and hodling from the ETFs. So with that said, I think if Pulse Chain has potential to do 100x and beyond, 1000x potentially, but I think anything less than a 10x of SAC price is a complete and utter failure. And what would that be from current price? Wouldn't that be like a 20 or 30x for Pulse Chain right here to do a 10x of SAC? I don't know if you know that math, Mando. Usually good on the moon math for Pulse Chain.
I mean, a 10x of SAC from here?
Yes. Like, what would it take to be a 10x of SAC from here? How many x's is that?
Well, I mean, it's about a just under a 2x to SAC rate from here. So
it's like a 25x.
Yeah. So, and if you get a 25x of Pulse Chain, I think the lowest ratio of pTGC due to its mechanics falls within Pulse Chain. Even if there's other shiny objects, even if the blue chips get the demand or the hype, because Richard Hart is dumping money into them from the OA wallet. That's where you get like that Bitcoin dominance effect, except for blue chips. I think PTGC, worst case scenario, is a 10-to-1 ratio Pulse chain. And worst case scenario, you get a 25x out of Pulse chain from here. Due to liquidity bonding, what does that put you at for PTGC? 10x multiple over a 25x on Pulse chain. I think it's worst case scenario, not including passive income. If you buy PTGC right now, what you're going to see by Q1, Q2, 2026. Which for many people is the best safe bet play they probably will ever have in their entire crypto career that they can actually get liquidity out of as well.
Yeah. I know there's probably a lot of people out there wondering what we're all waiting for. So for those who may not know, I'd just like to share it real quick. So I believe it was in May, right, this month, that 1/3 of the national debt was due to be refinanced. And they don't have to refinance it then. They can refinance it anywhere after that. But that's generally where they hit their 80%, their 70% payoff mark when they can refinance. And the reason they do that is because that means that they can take out the cash between what they refinance and what they owe, and it's tax-free. So a lot of people follow that model, and they'll pay off a loan 70%, refinance, and take the cash tax-free. And so I believe personally that we're waiting for the whole tariff situation to wash out, because the better we do there, the lower of an interest rate they can negotiate for the refinance, which gives them more money to work with. And after that, everybody will have a lower interest rate, which gives everybody else more money to work with on that cash out refi. And so I think that's a big reason why it's so delayed and still delayed. I think that's what we're waiting on. And I believe after a few months following that is when the whole market, not just crypto, it'll be stock, it'll be everything, just gets its breath, right? So I think that's what we're waiting on.
It's like generally by now the Fed would have lowered rates. And so the business cycle is elongated. And when they lower rates, Trump was just with Larry Fink. And look what he did with everything in the Middle East. I think that the economy is literally on the precipice of a massive freaking boom, dude.
Yeah, the deals that have been announced in the last couple months are, I think they're first of their kinds.
When you've got Fink and Trump hanging out together in the Middle East, kicking it, it's probably about to boom, bro.
That's dope, huh? Yeah, to see them, because they're going to be an early adopter. So to see them get hooked up with a super good deal and make a massive investment, that is the biggest green flag I've ever seen, right? Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, cheap money with low interest rates is how risk on assets and collectibles explode. And, that's kind of what we saw during COVID. We saw an influx of quantitative easing, low interest rates, and people getting stimulus checks. And, I don't know how much you guys are into this, but, of course, Bitcoin and stuff exploded. But collectibles exploded. Trading cards exploded. And those are all because those are risk on assets. Those are seen as investments that are, heavier risk. And that's what happens when you have that cheap money. So you're onto something with the refinancing, but it also comes down to when interest rates go that low, people think they can take out loans and outperform that low interest rate by taking risk on investments. And that's all coming soon. Quantitative tightening is kind of ending, or we're entering quantitative easing. But yeah, these interest rates should have been cut already. You can wonder why they haven't, or is it politically motivated, or whatever their goal was, sub 2% inflation. If you follow Trueflation, which gives you accurate live data for the past 12 months in a row, we've been sub 2% now for about 2 or 3 months. Fed data is 45 days delayed. So the last meeting they just had was the first time they were getting close. They were saying it was like 2.3%. But the Trueflation live data is showing that we're at like 1.9%. So the market, as far as the betting markets, have us getting 2 to 3 interest rate cuts this year. And, the year's still ticking away. We're in May. We're almost halfway done through the year, and we still haven't had a rate cut. So I would expect to see the first rate cut happen in July. I think they keep stalling, but green flags still keep popping up, like you said. They're kind of hands tied, forced to cut in July. You probably get a cut in July, September, and November. If you get 3 cuts, quantitative easing, these markets are going to explode, and that kind of adds on to my thesis on why I think for the first time ever, we break the 4-year halving cycle of Bitcoin, and we actually extend beyond what would be kind of the Q4 top that everybody's expecting. And people are going to get caught with their pants down as we continue to run through Q1 and potentially Q2 of 2026. But we'll see when we get there. Everything is lining up, and just have some patience, have some conviction, find the plays you love, and compound those rewards, and you're going to be thanking yourself here in less than a year.
Bullish, man.
Not always right, but right more than I'm wrong. And the predictions, not always to the day, but the general macro is usually correct. So we'll see if the trend continues, but that's how I see it. And that's why I have that 244K Bitcoin target. And, if you look at my pinned tweet, even the video on my Twitter feed, when everybody was doom and gloom saying stocks were going to zero, I literally posted that video and pinned it that day, talking about the V-shaped recovery, the history on why I think it's going to repeat itself and details on why I think that's going to happen. And if you look at the NASDAQ right now, we are literally a couple % away from all-time highs on the NASDAQ. When just a couple weeks ago, everybody was telling you we were going to zero. And they were all wrong. They all got left behind. Bitcoin's almost at new all-time highs. NASDAQ's almost at new all-time highs. S&P, gold is a few $100s off all-time highs. And things really are just getting started. The quantitative easing isn't even underway. There hasn't been interest rate cuts. There's still war going on globally, and no retail is coming into the risk-on asset market. There's a ton of cash in institutional finance sidelined right now, hoping for another drop, and we'll see if they get it or not. Now, there could be some volatility and some consolidation, but I think the lows across the board are put in for the cycle, and upward and onward towards the right direction.
I read that that Trump beat or broke the tariff record for the United States, and he beat it in 1 month. So that's another thing that we've never even seen in our lifetime before. He talked about cutting like income tax. That'd be another thing that we've never seen before. So I mean, this cycle, it could ramp for especially when you're talking about bringing manufacturing onshore. This thing could ramp for the next 8 years, right? It could do that. Maybe it kind of just never stops because, the money's going to keep coming in. And I think it's going to last a lot longer than through, February. I think it's going to take them a lot longer to do everything. But it'll be positive news and positivity, and the market will still be going up. I truly believe that. I tell everybody, the only reason there's a market crash is because somebody sold, and they did really well on their investment. And, they have a success story, right? But yeah, that's the only reason a market crashes. And the more you study it, oh my gosh, here's something that I learned. The more you study this, the United States business model, I'll call it, the more things you see that have been bought and paid for by a lobbyist to pay Congress to pass it in the bill, and they did. We have this road that's been paved for us. And it is literally the best business environment and business opportunity on the face of the planet in the history of humankind. So they paved this road with things like, if you establish an LLC and a trust, then if the business goes bankrupt due to you getting sued, then they can't touch your house. They can't touch any of your assets because it's not in your name. And so you're like, what? Not in my name? And yeah. It's well, how can I possibly refinance $200 million and have it not be in my name? That sounds absolutely just, borderline illegal. And they're like, no, it's not in your name. And you're like, wow. So if you default on that, then nothing in your life changes? Exactly. And I'm just like, wow. So I found several things like that I just feel like they've just been bought and paid for, and now we get to enjoy the road that they've paved. But yeah, the more you study that, the more you see the market being really made for them. I've found other things that I won't disclose yet, but there's it's the machine is built, the creator of the machine built the machine the way that they wanted it to be. And secrets get lost, secrets get missed. But I'll give you one. So inside of the EVM validator, there is an execution layer. And in this execution layer, there's a place where you can plug in a module. And so I look at that and I'm like, whoever built this in a way they knew exactly what they were building. They built it literally the best way you could possibly build it. When I saw that, and then kind of just they've kind of built the whole economy in their favor.
Give you a heads up. I need to be shutting this down in at least 4 minutes. So, Banana, if you have any questions on your end on YouTube, feel free to bring them up. If anyone listening has any questions, feel free to raise your hand real quick and ask them. If not, you guys can just carry out for the next couple minutes, but I will be shutting it down here soon.
Okay, there aren't any questions on YouTube.
Cool. Well, I saw you guys on here. My meeting ended early tonight, so I figured I would jump on and just spend some time.
Yeah, thanks for hopping in, Ty.
Yeah. Just trying to knock the rust off,
It's the place to do
I
it.
think you're good to probably get with the family, enjoy what you're doing, hurt the kids in the background. So,
Yeah.
everybody listening, I'm sure there'll be plenty more PTGC spaces. Go spend some time with the family, get away from the charts, and whatever portion of your portfolio is in PTGC, you just know it's in good hands and the machine is working while you're sleeping.
Yep.
Yeah, good call. All right, good night, everybody.
See you guys.
See ya. Well, that was a good one. That was a good one. I gotta go listen to it because all my distractions. All right, guys. If you're new, Derek, I think you seemed like you might be a new gentleman. I will be doing a presentation on the greatest currencies Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific on my channel, this channel right here. So jump in. If you're new or you know somebody that is new, send them over. We'll walk them through and they can ask any questions. Yeah. All right, guys. Have a great night and we'll see you around the blockchain. See you.